Hey folks, Objectively Dan here, and let me tell you something. Tech billionaires are a walking contradiction because you see, on the one hand, they present themselves as visionary geniuses changing the world with groundbreaking innovations, but on the other hand, they amass a grotesque amount of wealth with the very systems they've created that exacerbate inequality and exploitation. They love to talk about disruption and how their products make the world better, but if you look a little bit closer, many of them are just reaping the benefits of monopolies, tax loopholes, and a labor force of underpaid workers. Instead of using their vast resources to solve real world problems like poverty, climate change, or healthcare, they pour all this money into space tourism or vanity projects, all while the people who make their empires possible live paycheck to paycheck. And yet we're supposed to treat them like benevolent gods, and our system is designed to reward those who already have everything. It's getting harder to pretend it's anything but a massive wealth extraction scheme. But you know what? That's just my personal conspiracy theory. If you have your own little, ideas about how the world works, you should call into the show because we are starting right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, Objectively Dan. This is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time. We talk to people about what they believe and why. And if you'd like to call us, you can certainly do that. We have open lines at the moment. It is at 512-991-9242 or through your computer at tiny.cc/calltw. And as always, Truth Wanted is a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And every single week, I always try to have a special guest, and this week is no different. I have Amanda Bonanza joining me today. Amanda Bonanza, what is happening?
Not a whole lot. I'm here on Truth Wanted for the first time. I'm very excited. I'm a fan of the show, and it's nice to get to meet you, Dan, and it's nice to get to see the magic that goes on behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, you've learned all of our dark, dirty secrets, like how we just kind of talk aimlessly about. What were we saying? We were talking about dressing up Kelly in basically a pimp outfit, I think, for maybe a super challenge.
Yeah, money. We got to do that for the super chat challenge. Yeah, we need to get him.
For the boy. We need to find a spirit Halloween that's open in January so we can make that happen. But we'll do it. We'll accomplish that, I think.
Seems like an untapped market if you think about it.
Yeah, almost as if they did a whole joke about it on BoJack Horseman. I'm completely ripping that off. But anyway, before we get started with today's show, we want to give you guys the last week's results, rather, of the We Want the Truth segment. Last week, we asked you guys, what are your 2025 predictions? No political answers. And here are our favorite answers for that. Number 3 comes from Jeremiah 20 verses 9, who says, I predict I will remain a Christian. So, yeah, okay, interesting. We're just going to break it down until that changes. No, just kidding. But all right, that's an interesting one. Number 2 comes from some kind of Dickie who says, my prediction for 2025, this prediction will not come true. So that, trying to do the whole, paradox sort of thing here, right? Very clever, very funny, you guys.
Yeah, it was some real looper business.
Exactly. It's the whole, like, what's the one where it's like there's 2 guards and the other guard is one tells the truth and one lies, and it's like,
this one always tells the truth and this one always lies.
So one of those kind of situations. I don't have time to think about it.
It's a real logical paradox. A robot would have self-destructed for sure.
Right. But our number 1 pick from this week comes from Matt K 7013, who says, my 2025 prediction in their best Mr. T voice, pain, which is not wrong and probably applies to a lot of us, unfortunately. So great positive answers, you guys, for your 2025 predictions. Really, really good.
It's a bright future, I think.
It's so bright.
We're just gazing into the sun.
It's so bright as we slowly sundown in the empire of American hegemony. But hey, At least we're here, and we can have some fun while the fires burn in the middle of winter in the Los Angeles area. Very sad stuff going on there, folks. Many of you probably know some folks out there who are struggling with that, so keep that in mind tonight. As we talk about conspiracy theories and stuff and all this other kinds of stuff, we're always keeping in mind that we're talking about real people, right? So let's just, keep that in mind whenever we talk about this stuff. Because I have a feeling maybe somebody's going to talk to us about it tonight. I don't know. That's my prediction for this show. But we have open lines right now. So anybody who wants to call in and talk to us about the kind of things that we do on Truth Wanted, let us know. We already got a super chat from Blind Limey who gave $20 and said, I hold this truth wanted to be self-evident that we have been imbued. Oh man, if we get that back on the screen. Oh no, I didn't see it in time. I didn't see it in time. Crew, there we go. That we have been imbued with certain inalienable rights. Oh my God. Those of life, liberty, and the pursuit of all things nerdy. Okay. Good twist. Of course, the British person among us would try to cop what the Americans have come up with. I see how it is. Blind Lively, thanks so much for your donation there. And let me tell you about the prompt for this next week. This next week's prompt, folks, you're gonna like this. We're talking about low-hanging fruit earlier with this one. I expect some low-hanging fruit kind of jokes for this one, which is finish the joke. Ken Ham, Kent Hovind, and Ray Comfort walk into a bar. And that's it. You guys finish it. You read your comments below, and we want to hear what you have to say. Real quick, we have another super chat from Nero who gave $5 and said, my personal conspiracy theory. And then, again, it goes by too fast. I need to get that back up on the screen because I can't read it in time. Thank you so much. My personal conspiracy theory, no Truth Wanted association. Many oligarchs are weaponizing the wealth/conviction disparity to strip rights. My God, we need to get that back up. I can't finish. I'm not fast enough with that. There we go. Thank you. Conviction. Okay. Many oligarchs are weaponizing the wealth/conviction disparity to strip rights from the lower class. Ooh, hot take. I think I kind of agree with that. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of a prediction that is.
Yeah, not much of a conspiracy. There
was a show in the 1980s called Newhart. It was the second of Bob Newhart's show. And there was a particular episode I recall where the whole town was wowed by a man that predicted the past. And that was the theme of the show. And everyone, and Bob was the only guy that was like, I don't see what the big deal is here. But everyone's like, yeah, did you know he predicted that man would land on the moon in 1969? And everyone was astounded. They were very impressed by this man. And I feel like that super chat, and we love that super chat. Thank you. But that almost was predicting the past.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's happening right now. We literally have
it's true. It's the present.
We literally have convicted felons who are fighting the fires in Los Angeles right now because in the state of California and also in the United States at large, slavery is not illegal. A lot of people don't understand that. It's not illegal. You can make people do things if they're part of the prison system. In fact, California, they tried a proposition last year to overturn that, and they voted no to overturn that. So they are still working. It's like 80 cents an hour or something. Like fighting these fires, these like 18, 19, 20-year-olds. So that's the world we live in. That's not a conspiracy. That's real. So
that's not a conspiracy. I mean, I think it's written into the 14th Amendment. I think if I'm not 100% on that, I think that it's like that's a clause in the amendment. That's like, it's like when they abolished slavery, they wrote that, but then they added that. Oh, well, unless you're in prison.
Right. Exactly. So it's not a great situation for those
really
involved. But anyway, maybe we can, I do want to keep maybe talking about that, but actually first I should probably finish because we technically didn't finish the bit here. So once again, Ken Ham, Ken Hovind, Ray Comfort walk into a bar, give your best answers below and we'll read for next week. And I had to reiterate because Amanda, you said you had a good answer for this one. So I
don't know if it's good, but I definitely came up with one. And so they walk into a bar, They all order beers, and the bartender looks at them and she hands them 3 empty glasses. They look at each other a little confused. And Ken Ham just kind of looks at the bartender and says, "Hey, mate, there's no beer in these glasses." And she says, "Yeah, there is. You just got to believe it."
That's really good. Oh man, that's really good. Oh man, are you guys gonna beat that? Because I don't know. That's pretty good. They got a good chuckle out of me.
It seemed like a softball over the plate, really.
It worked for me. It worked for me. I'm taking it. I like it. Amanda, great job with that. Folks, see if you can beat that.
That's what I'm
That's
here
your
for.
bare minimum right there. If you can clear that, then maybe you'll get featured in the top 3 comments for next week. Yeah, I quite enjoyed that. So back to you, Amanda Bonanza. You are on YouTube, but not under the name Amanda Bonanza. Tell us about your YouTube channel.
I am on a YouTube channel called The Transverse, which is a part of a larger organization based in Ventura County, which is where I live in Southern California. And it is a transgender rights and advocacy group. And we run support groups, and we run just events in the county, whatever we're doing to help the community and spread awareness and destigmatize the existence of transgender people, and also to just normalize it and advance communication is really my primary goal with it. There's a lot of ignorance, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of confusion, and there's a bit of a chasm between cis people and trans people, and it's an understandable one that's there. And because the transgender community at large, it's a lot of compromised people, and just the simple condition of being trans in the first place is a bit of a it can come with a lot of baggage.
Sure.
And so there's a lot of transgender people are necessarily antisocial or socially impaired, or aren't good with people, or have other psychological and emotional conditions. And so they're hypersensitive. And so a lot of cis people will ask what they think are fine, polite questions to ask, and they aren't taken that way by the community. And so a knee-jerk reaction can very often be abrasive and offensive. And then that just kind of like sets the whole thing apart. It's like, well, I didn't mean to insult you, and yet you jumped down my throat. It's like, I don't want to deal with you anymore. And so this barrier of communication has been there for a while. It's closing. It's a gap that's closing, and that's good, but it's still there. And my purpose at this stage in my life is to diminish that gap as much as possible.
Interesting. So when diminishing that gap, you're talking about, advancing that communications, like what are some of the efforts that you're doing to do that?
Primarily, I run a show on that channel, and on the Transverse channel, and it used to be before the election, it was a show where we answered questions from the community and whomever, just anyone that had questions about the transgender experience, and we would just answer them honestly. And my co-host Lilith, she is a delight, and she's an improv comedian, and so we do the ha-has and the funny bones and a little bit of the goofballs, and keeping it light and keeping it real, and trying to bring a humanistic aspect to it. So it's not just all talk about intersectional this and that, and a lot of the lefty buzzwords that I think can turn a lot of people off. We kind of steer away from that stuff. I mean, some of it's important and you need it, and there's a time and a place for everything, but I think a lot of times when you listen to any sort of transgender themed podcast or watch a transgender show, a lot of it is overly serious. And that's becoming less and less the case too. There's a lot of TikTok channels and YouTube channels of people that are injecting humor into it finally. But it hasn't been around that long. And so that's primarily it, is that I do that show, and that's the gist of it. And then help around the community as best I can, and just try and be a positive person. And I guess it sounds cheesy, but lead by example. But that means kind of makes me feel greasy saying that, but it's true.
I hear what you're saying though, because there is like, so there's a commonly used term for a part of YouTube that's called bread tube, right? And it's sort of like
Yeah.
the sort of leftist sort of kind of space where obviously they're often not just accepting but advocating for folks like trans people, right? And other minority groups and stuff, right? And there is a reaction to that. And first of all, I like all the creators in that space generally, right? I like the stuff they put out, but I'm also a very specific kind of person, right? Like the Joe Blow down the street from me is probably not watching ContraPoints. You know what I mean? Like they're
Yeah,
probably
exactly.
they're probably not watching. They're probably watching NFL, or whatever, just whatever else everybody people like. So like I'm interested in that idea of, how do you broaden these channels of communication to where you're still putting out these ideas of normalizing and accepting trans people, for example, right? But also putting it in a way that's going to be more accessible, because like again, my neighbor probably doesn't know what the word intersectionality means, particularly in an academic context,
Exactly.
right? Like what and do we have, when we have these discussions, do we have to introduce new vocabulary words? Sometimes, yeah, I think so. But also there's the experience a part of it too, right? It's not just the academic side of it. So that I think that's interesting that you take that approach.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'll put it in a way that I think you could even relate to, Dan. And I'm pretty sure you're a vegan. Am I right about that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so there's a thing with like, there's a stigma there too. Like I'm sure you're aware,
Sure.
living in Texas, and like, and people will, if you're like, if you call it vegan food, people they'll recoil. They'll, I don't want that. If you
Sure.
can, here's some vegan cookies, but if you just call it food, people don't recoil. Like, 'cause
Yeah.
it's just food. Like you can say, you don't have to say, here, have this vegan meal. You can say, here, enjoy this meal, and it's the vegan part doesn't have to be amplified, and it doesn't have to be emphasized and brought attention to. And as soon as you don't do that, it becomes immediately more palatable.
Right.
And it's similar to that. And I don't mean to put it in any sort of way where like I'm erasing anything or diminishing it. We're openly trans, but it's one of those things where there's no reason to keep emphasizing it. I'm not flying the colors. Like I'm not doing any of that stuff. I'm just living my
Mhm.
life being a person. And I think just being a genuine, caring, open, honest person with a sense of humor is kind of enough.
Yeah, no, I totally understand what you mean by that. It's interesting you bring up the vegan thing, because a lot of vegan food you don't see labeled as vegan these days. Sometimes you do, and if you do, it's usually on the back of the label. It's usually not on the front. The buzzword these days is plant-based.
Right.
Most plant-based food is vegan food, but it turns out if you take the same label, everything's the same except one thing says vegan on it, one thing says plant-based, more people are going to buy the plant-based thing. That's what people have
Yeah,
found
I
out
figured
through,
it out.
these think tanks that do these marketing research and stuff, right? So everything these days is plant-based, when again, like 90 to 99% of that is vegan. So sometimes words do matter when talking about this kinds of stuff. But
Almost definitely.
yeah, I agree with you though. It's like it's not my entire identity. It's a one facet of it,
Right.
and hopefully not the most interesting part. I think there are some people that they get the
I think you're
impression.
interesting, Dan.
Well, I know, I appreciate that, but there's a stereotype, particularly amongst the gay and trans community, that
Yeah.
being gay is your personality, right? Like that's a thing people say because it's something that people are passionate about and they talk about it a lot, or maybe they have flags up, and it's like, oh, but yeah, it's something that obviously would interest you if you're in that group, but they're people, right? They have other
Right.
things, and so I like that approach. I really like that approach of just like trying to just live your life as a person and show that you're just like anybody else, right? That's
I
you
mean,
know.
that's the gist of it, and that is
Mhm.
me too. That's my take on it. But I mean, there are plenty of people in the community that it is a major part of their identity, and they
Yeah,
do all that stuff. And
yeah,
I
which
understand
is
that
valid, by
aspect
the
of it
way.
too.
I'm not
Right?
saying
Yeah,
it's not at
I get
all.
it.
Yeah, yeah,
Right, and I don't want to diminish that either. But for me, it's never been my way. It's like I've never taken any sort of pride, or I guess pride is an accurate enough word. I've never really understood the concept in taking pride in something you didn't actually actively do.
mm,
And so like, oh, if I'm gay or I'm trans or whatever it is, like, or whatever my ethnicity might be, it's like I'm gonna take pride in that, my hometown. Like it's like
mm.
I didn't do anything. I was born
Sure.
here. Like I didn't, this isn't anything. Like I actually do things. I want to be proud of the things that I actually do, not the
Yeah.
things that I was destined by birth.
Yeah. 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 That's and I agree with that sentiment as well. Same thing with the atheist thing as well. You know, I don't go around wearing upside down crosses telling people I'm an atheist every day of my life, right? You know, but at the same time, I mean, I think there is a when I like pride in the sense that, oh, I can be open about this if I want to, right? I don't have
Yeah.
to feel ashamed or hide this away. And I think that's like a really good thing about pride, the pride movement, the pride communities and stuff. And that's been a way for people to express themselves and not feel like they have to hide that part of themselves. Unfortunately, not everybody takes that. And she's good in that. They say, oh, it's pride. You always hear
Yeah.
pride's a sin, you get but there's always gonna be haters, right? So there you go.
Well, I mean, I think
Um,
you want to get into that territory too,
yeah.
because, like, I mean, we can talk about the seven deadly sins.
Yeah. Well,
If
you
you
know,
and I think pride can be, I don't want to say a sin, but as much as like I can see how that can be a detrimental, like maybe at least a liability, like might be a better way to a character flaw in the sense where it's over pride, like, or and I think a better word for that is when your ego gets in the way of your decision
sure.
making.
Sure. Yeah,
Like,
there needs to be a difference between pride in the ego sense and pride in the not being afraid kind of sense.
right.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. Because I think being proud, like, because parents are proud of their children, like, and I
Hmm.
think that's a good thing. Like, that's a good
Sure.
thing. Like, I work with children. I'm proud of them when they accomplish something. It's great, and so I'm proud of myself when I accomplish something. I think if I work hard at something and I make something or I do something that I think was positive, I take pride in my work. And I think that's a very good thing. And that's a perfectly natural thing. But that's a different thing than just, I'm a proud person. I'm not going to admit when I'm wrong kind of thing. And I
Right.
think that's where the difference is.
Yeah. Messaging is important. Marketing these ideas is important. Like that's such a huge thing. And it's so stupid because like everybody should just accept people for who they fucking are. But, not
Wouldn't
everybody
that be
does. And
nice? Not the
yeah.
world we live in. And it's probably not the world we ever will. And that's okay. It is the world. I think we've been in a very strange time
Mm,
as Americans in the twilight of the 20th century, going into the 21st. I think we got a glimpse at a very very peaceful bubble that we all thought and were told that was going to last, and I think we're seeing it ending.
mm,
And I think what happened is I think there was a little bit of hubris there. I think we all got to this point where we thought, oh, we've conquered nature with our tech and with our things, and we don't have to worry about that. We are the dominant species and we can do whatever we
mm.
want. Nothing's going to hurt us. And we got away from the concept that we're still organisms on Earth fighting for survival. And we still very much are doing that, and all our evolutionary instincts pull us in that direction. And it's why we have the tendency to, like you were talking about the tech bros, it's like, well,
Yeah.
hoarding wealth is a survival tactic. Like it's an understandable thing, and you can talk about like the greed of the wealthy, and that's certainly a thing. But I've met plenty of not wealthy people that were also greedy. It's
Sure.
not necessarily a characteristic solely of the rich. It's just it's a human characteristic.
Yeah, that's true. And I've said this before too. Progress isn't linear, and we make that mistake a lot. Progress is relative to your time period. The idea of a nation state is still quite young in its infancy, and there's already been so many that have fallen. The idea of just, oh, everything's going to be great because this is America and things will just take care of itself. I don't believe that. I think it's made by the efforts of people like yourself, people who are advocating for what they believe is right, and giving resources and support to the people who need it, because that is how movements actually do rise. I think that's how change does happen. It is from people who decide to make a difference and not just bend to the whims of the status quo, because sometimes and oftentimes the status quo is not always in people's best interest. But hey, before we get too heavy on that, maybe
not always. I mean, most of the time, though, right?
Yeah. This is a call-in show, so maybe we should talk to some other people.
Yeah, people. I want to talk to the people.
Huh? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I
great.
love it. I love it.
Before we do, we have to give a shout out to the patron of the week, because every single week we are always giving a shout to the folks who donate on patreon.com. Thank you guys so much for donating to the Truth Wanted Patreon. This week's patron of the week is going to be Jesse Clark. Thank you so much, Jesse Clark. And thank you to everybody that donates. You guys are amazing. Tiny.cc/PatreonTW if you want to support the show. And with that done, I say, let's hop right in. We've got a couple of interesting folks who want to talk to us. I think Eduardo from Brazil is going to be first on my list here. Eduardo, you are live. Hello, Eduardo. You are live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Talked before. Yeah, we talked before. How are you doing? And how is it's Amanda, her name?
Amanda. Ciao, Eduardo.
Yes,
hello.
You're on with Amanda Bonanza right now. Yeah, Eduardo, you and I actually talked on Talk Heathen, another part of the atheist community of Austin. But yeah, we talked.
I mean, we talked before.
Right.
And but I actually think that this show might be more appropriated, but in this case. But yeah, first I'd like to apologize because I called last week. I don't know if the other hosts will hear that or not, but that's the only way I could find it. Because I talk about reincarnation and ancient aliens and all kinds of things, and it wasn't done on purpose, but I sort of threw him right at the deep end, like I don't know how I put it. You know, I just.
Well, believe it or not, we actually have our host from last week here right now, and maybe we could bring him in if he wants. Kelly, we'll get Kelly in the camera there. Hey, Kelly, how's it going? Can you hear us?
Hey, yeah, how are you?
Kelly, are you accepting of Eduardo's apology here?
Yeah, sure. I am totally accepting of Eduardo's apology. Thank you very much, Eduardo.
There you go.
Isn't that sweet?
You have no problem. So I'm glad you accept me. So what I call about last week and this week, it's actually spiritism, but not everybody believes the same things because in spiritism, because it's kind of a it doesn't have a hierarchical structure, and but yeah, what I was talking about is this. I was reading something, and the old religions, according to Spiritism, supposedly were created by spirits that were sent here everywhere. For example, in India, spirits that would deal better with the culture of India, so this is the polytheists, and with the Hebrews, they were given the Bible and Moses, and actually. And it comes into that concept that I told you on Talk Hidden of the blind man and the elephant. That the blind man go on a road and find an elephant and one touch. They.
This is I think this is a pretty popular idea, Eduardo, because there's a lot of people that think, oh well, a lot of religion is just kind of a lot of roads that are leading to the same place, right? Like, oh, here's some. As long as people are kind of following their own path, that's what's appropriate to them, right? And I think that's kind of what you're alluding to. This is an idea that appeals to you, is what it sounds like.
Sort of, but not quite.
Okay.
What I mean is this: today we have a great confusion because of that. But the question is. what we are here to do is like, and that's actually according to spiritism. What we are here to do is to grow in knowledge and and to gain moral, to let's say to acquire knowledge and to become more moral. And and I think that's kind of the it's a little like the every way goes. Everybody has his way, and then we'll find the way at the end. But it's not quite like you said. Progress is not linear. You're talking about that now.
Yeah,
and,
I think. Sorry, not to interrupt you, Eduardo, but I just want to kind of summarize what we're talking about here so far, because like you talk about a couple different ideas here. Because one is this idea that there's a bunch of, it's the blind man and the elephant, right? There's maybe something bigger in the whole, and you also made an interesting claim that there's spirits that are kind of around the earth that maybe give particular religious messages based on the cultures of different people, which is really interesting. But you're kind of describing what is often ascribed to as the problem with organized religion versus individual personal people's religions, right? Individual people's personal religions tend to be principle centric, and that's pretty much it, right? Whereas organized religions, they come with the hierarchies, they come with the baggages that come with that, and the structure, but also the strife that ends up being endemic to those structures. But like you bring up one principle that I think we could both agree on, which I like, which is we want to pursue knowledge, right? We think that knowledge is kind of a good thing. So I want to challenge you real quick on this, Eduardo. So you have one idea, which is that spirits give people religion in different cultural contexts. That's an interesting idea. I have a different idea. My idea is that human beings just kind of lean towards the spiritual sometimes. And because that's kind of something that's inherent to human beings at different places at different times, human beings kind of invent their own religions at different points in time, whether sometimes from the top down, but most of the time from bottom up, right? They just kind of come up with some ideas that eventually bring it to something bigger. So here are two different ideas, right? How do we know which one is true? What can we do to figure that out?
Actually, I think that they actually complete each other, because here's the thing: if you get from okay, so your idea is that the religion the beginning of the religion before organizing comes from down to up, right?
Yeah, in my view, Eduardo, I think all religions are man-made on some level.
Right.
Yeah. I think it all comes from people.
Right. Yeah. No? Yeah. No. Right. Right. So,
Eduardo, if I may,
that I say that. Yeah.
Eduardo, I think Dan said something that I'd like a little clarification, because you're coming from the perspective that like the spirits are giving people religion, and Dan was essentially contradicting that, saying that he doesn't think that the religion comes from spirits. He thinks that it's man-made. And you said in response to that they complement each other, but I don't see that. I see those as contradictory things, and I'd love it if you could clear that up for me.
Right. Right. So here's the thing: it's man-made, but spirits are reincarnated in people. They actually grow up as people, and they don't remember what they came for. They have this intuition, and they are prepared according to the place. Because yes, religion comes from the people. The ideas come actually from the people. That idea of a God that can just go there and tell them to do whatever they want, that doesn't happen, because if it's against their culture, it doesn't happen. You can see it a little more clearly if you see how laws are making. I'm a lawyer myself, and if
if you practice law, I'm sorry, Eduardo. There's always going to be a little bit of delay. So it's never me in trying to interrupt you on purpose. But I'm interested in wanting to know true things. That's what Truth Wanted is, right? So like you're presenting, I asked you kind of a question between how can we know between these two ideas are true? And I found it interesting because your response was kind of, here's some more ideas that I think lead to my idea being true, which is talking about reincarnation and these other kinds of concepts. But how do we get to these concepts in the first place? Like reincarnation, for example, how do we know that to be true? How do we know that to be a real phenomenon?
Okay. No, and let me just finish the question of being we both completing the idea, because yes, and religions are man-made, and they are stimulated by more evolved spirits wherever they are. But okay, let's go with reincarnation.
Yeah.
I can't give you scientific proof of reincarnation.
Really?
I
Oh wait! Oh, you said you can't.
Yeah, you said you can or you cannot.
Yeah, sorry, Eduardo. I thought you said I couldn't tell. Did you say you can or can't?
I cannot.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That tracks.
I cannot. But I can give what I believe is evidence, and what
that's good.
evidence is that is for example things that we are good at, even when we don't really study for it. Like, for example, I'm a decent guitar player, and I had some classes after I realized that in all some many years. But at the beginning, I actually learned by myself, and could do it pretty well in solos, and I think that it's not maybe it came from some other life, or people that
I have Eduardo, I have something to say about that. I'd like to run.
Go ahead, Amanda.
Eduardo, if I may, I'd like to bounce something off you, an idea here. So like the idea that, okay, so you're talking about kind of the concept of innate talent. Talent is what you're talking about. Like some people just seem to have an aptitude for certain things. Some people just can pick up a guitar and it makes more sense than it does to other people. Some people are better at engineering, whatever it may be. That is your skill. Right. And then there's the other end of that, which is skill, craft. And so like you say, you're a guitar player. I'm also a guitar player. And I'll tell you, and I'll tell you from my experience that the guitar was not intuitive. I had to learn it, and I had to be bad before I was good, and I had to practice. And the reason I got good was because I enjoyed it and I wanted to be good, so I worked hard at it. And I think really the realistic reality of it is that I think if anybody puts in the work, they could get there. But there are certain people that definitely will get there faster because it makes sense. And I think that's what you're getting at with right, with the reincarnation things. But what I would, and this is where I want to like kind of throw, there's another spitball out there at you. Like, so the idea of reincarnation kind of, that relies on the fact that like once a person dies, they still have consciousness in some way, that their essence is maintained. And we don't really have any evidence for that. In fact, we have a lot of evidence that that does not happen. However, and I'm going to throw this out there, and I'm not 100% on this because I'm not a biologist and I'm not a neuroscientist, but I think there's some legitimacy to the idea that maybe like because we are evolved creatures and we have parents and like DNA is replicated, and like some of our innate and for lack of a better word, our instincts may just come from that, from like layers upon layers and generations upon generations of chemical knowledge that gets.
You're talking epigenetic memories right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying like I don't think like anyone like remembers. Oh, I remember being Joan of Arc. Like, but like more along the lines of like, I mean, we are organic creatures, And I don't know about that for sure. I've heard that there's some legitimacy to that, but from my limited perspective on knowing about those things, I would feel like that is a more, maybe at least has more legs of something to maybe explore than actual reincarnation. What do you think about that?
I can buy. I mean, they don't. Yeah, I can think about that. I mean, I used to think something like that too, and but I never really explored that. But this is one of the things. The other things is and last time I said deja vu, but it's not exactly deja vu. It's people that you meet, and it seems that you know them for your whole life. I mean, to me, that's evidence. I mean, and evidence. I mean, it's evidence. You might agree, you might not. We can discuss that here, but I can change my mind. And I think I think when you stop to be willing to change our minds is when you die, and sometimes we die in life. But
I can think of some things.
Evidence.
You always die in life.
Yeah, that's true. I'll tell you this, Eduardo. I can think of some things that to me would count as much stronger evidence towards reincarnation. Like, for example, if I could start speaking Portuguese to you right now, and I'd be like, oh, I don't know. It's just it's from my past life. That would be interesting because I'm a white kid from America. I don't know any Portuguese. Okay. I never learned it or anything. Right. If there were like more instances of these kinds of skills as you were talking about earlier, but like, feeling like somebody, I mean, that's a pretty subjective feeling, right? Because like, hey, you can feel like you've known someone your whole life and that other person might not feel the same way about you, right? So it kind of has to go both ways there, doesn't it? Maybe
what about when both feel like that? Because I had people in my life that both of them felt like that.
Yeah. And I think it is what it is. I think it's a feeling, right? I don't know if it's more than that. I think you have to be really hard pressed to say, oh, it's reincarnation, right? But I don't know.
I think maybe there's a middle ground there. Like, I don't think necessarily reincarnation, but like it might be a little more than a feeling. I mean, who's to say? Like, I'll say this, Eduardo, you sound like you're a curious person who's with an open mind and you're trying to learn stuff. And I think that's great. And I like to try and keep an open mind as much as I can. We're all human beings. We're all a little limited in that. We all have our hang-ups and things that we get caught up on. But I mean, the idea of like, who knows? There's a lot of things that we don't understand that seem like they could be kismet, or they could be, or there's something at play that's greater than ourselves. And I think human beings have a tendency to automatically go there. And I think one of the things that we can do as human beings is we can entertain that idea, which is what it sounds like you're doing. But maybe not jump to the conclusion that, oh, it's got to be reincarnation. That's what it is, because I can't, because then that's where it gets sticky. And then when you get into the religions and you talk about well, it's man-made. Well, that's how they start, is people make assumptions about things, and then they build, and then they make those assumptions, and then they just carry on as though those things are true, and then they build on top of that, and you end up building this edifice of something like, oh, I don't know, the Catholic Church, and then you end up saying that, oh yeah, well, you can't eat meat on Fridays, and you can only have sex with people in a certain way, and so that's where it gets problematic for me. There, Eduardo, isn't that like, I don't think you have bad ideas. But I think it's dangerous to make assumptions, because it all goes back to like, well, yeah, there are some unexplained things, but also like that's why we investigate them, and we try to find reasons. We're getting better at it every day.
Yeah, we're running out of time for this call, but Eduardo, I'll let you say your piece here. Go ahead.
Let me just say, one thing that. You're right about that, but one thing about the spiritism is this: we don't hold dogmas. We are ready to change our mind exactly because of that. Because religions and the trappings, the dogmas, the talismans, things like that, were things we believe. Kardec believes in that followed the religion, and I believe too, were things that were needed for the childhood of humanity. Now we are getting out of it. That's why the last time I talked to you, I think it was the last time I talked to you, then I actually said, maybe some of you atheists will have to lead the charge, because actually you are, according to us, you are closer to the truth than the Christians, the Muslims. We are Christians, but
I think so.
It's a very different. Yeah, I think you are closest, and of course, I think I am closest, but I'm ready to be wrong.
Right.
I appreciate, Eduardo, that you do call in to talk to us about it, because not everybody does, and that's really meaningful. I do have to let you go. I am going to go ahead and drop you here, but thank you so much, Eduardo, for your time. I hope I can talk to you again in the future. But yeah, so there you go. That's our Kardecist spiritist endorsement. Okay, we at least got one.
I remember that call from last week. I remember him and Kelly. Kelly got a little frustrated. Kelly reached the end of his fuse at a certain point.
Yeah, but Eduardo's an interesting character because you know, how many Kardecist spiritists do you get to talk to every week? I don't know. I don't get to talk to. He's the only one I know. But you know, like, I like that idea of, hey, I'm still looking for stuff and I wouldn't change my mind. I do think, Eduardo, based on my conversation with him, at least, I do think that's true. And so hopefully we give him some. He
seems like an honest fellow that's doing. Yeah. He's just, you know, he's all just floating through the sea of the universe, like we all are, and you know, we're all just kind of figuring it out as we go. And I mean, I get it. I understand, because you know, I'm definitely an atheist, but like I'm not so Gnostic about like that end of things, in the sense that, like, when you think about, like, even like we know for a fact that, like, we have limited perception, right? So like, even in the spectrum of light that we see, like, our ability to perceive it is, you know, if it's as wide as the camera, and we've got that much of it. And so to me, it would seem somewhat preposterous and ludicrous to assume that there's nothing going on outside of our perception, and whatever those things may be, whatever. But the nice thing about it is we also have tech that can investigate those things and tell us in better ways what's going on outside of those perceptions. And we've learned a lot because of it. And I tend to think, yeah, it's nice to speculate. I mean, that's essentially what philosophy is, right? Is you just sit down and you think about things, and what if it's this? What if it's that? You know, but in the end, like, reaching the conclusion that, it's got to be this. I think that's, to me, where the danger lies.
Yeah. You know, Eduardo says he's a lawyer. That's interesting. That's new Eduardo lore that I've heard now.
I see.
And so, like, I'm very curious. Like, you know, I'm not familiar with the standards of Brazilian court. But, you know, if Eduardo were to make the case, hey, reincarnation is real, and he's offering up the evidence of, oh, well, it seems like you know somebody really well, I'm wondering if that would hold up. I wonder if that would be the kind of level of evidence that he'd be curious to, I don't know, would think wouldn't be challenged. Because I think that there's a lot of explanations for some of the stuff that he's talking about, right? I think Eduardo's one of these folks, and many people are guilty of this, who maybe sort of privilege ancient knowledge or ancient, you know, sort of thinkings as somehow untouchable in some way or uncritical in some way. Because I don't think all religions are equal. I don't think David Koresh's ideas are equal to, you know what I mean, to the Buddha, right? Like, I just think that
I would agree with that.
Yeah. We tend to privilege that sometimes. I think that's a bias in our culture.
I think that's definitely the case. And the farther something gets from living memory, the more mystery it has. And it just has to, because that's just the way things work. I mean, history itself is messy. And even just the if you want to call the science of history, whatever you want to call the mechanics of history, they're sloppy, and we don't know what happened. Like we know more about certain things and things that we can, but it's all guesswork. I remember I saw, like, there was do you remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books?
Oh, heck yeah.
So I used to be really into those when I was a kid, and I would go to the library and I would read a bunch of them. I remember reading one where it had something to do with archaeology, and you were an archaeologist and you had to go and dig up the things. And there was one path that you could take that got you to this one point where you found you were in the future, and you traveled to the future, and the archaeologists had found something from our present time, and they had constructed it with what they had to work with, and they had built they had a person, and it was a temple, and they had someone wearing a big thing around their neck, and these things on their arms, and they were adorned, and they assumed that it was a priest of some sort, but really it was just a bathroom, and they were wearing a toilet, and they got it all wrong.
Yeah. And I don't think when I say a religion is man-made, I don't I don't mean that in the sense that it's all, again, top down, or it's all consciously constructed. I just think ideas just kind of happen over time. Look at QAnon, right? QAnon kind of started as a weird role-playing thing,
it was a joke,
and then it ended up into a huge phenomenon of very real people whose lives are affected by that. And that's in the modern day with like internet and stuff. Can you imagine how creative people can be?
Scientology is not that old.
Sure.
Mormonism is a little older than that, but I mean, religions pop up all the time. It's like it's people. It's been said so many times, probably by you too, but like I've heard it so many times on this show and others on the ACA, and that humans hate not knowing the answers to things. People just we can't live with it. We need to plug something into that hole, and it's a real easy God's a real easy answer. It's just a real easy, quick catch-all thought stopper. I don't have to worry about that. Now that hole's plugged, I can go do my dishes.
Yeah, a thought terminating cliche. Right.
Yeah.
For sure. Anyway, we should I should read some quick announcements real quick, and then we can keep talking to some folks. So if you want to hear some of our content in audio only form, go to tiny.cc/AEN podcasts for all of the ACA shows, including this one. If you're like me and you're a podcast guy and you just like to listen to stuff while doing other things. So check that out if you haven't already. Another way to support us is by sending super chats. And we do have a super chat that came up earlier that I didn't get to read, from Isaiah S., who gave $5 and said, "New Jersey drones have issued a statement. Call us Legion, for we are many." I haven't. I need to check in on the New Jersey drone situation, folks. I'm behind on that. I don't know what the latest intel is on that.
People seem to stop caring.
Yeah, maybe it was just kind of a flash in the pan thing. I don't know.
Maybe not. I know the alien thing, ever since the CIA announced the UFO thing like a couple of years ago, it seemed like it's been more frequent.
You're talking about with the testimony in the
when they came out Congress, and were like, hey, I don't remember, it was during the last Trump administration. I think it was like the last, like in the end of 2020, and it was a summer of 2020, I think, and the CIA
you're talking about the UAP.
The UAP. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And we don't know what these are exactly, and they said that, and I think a lot of people ran with that. It's like aliens, like we knew it. But
I was the drone thing was interesting. I think it caught my attention because of the just the government response. The was very weird on that. Anyway, we won't have to retread that territory. Y'all go watch the other episodes for that. Go watch December's stuff for some more talk on that. But anyway, if you've ever said to yourself, you really love the ACA, gosh, you love it so much, I wish there was a way I could get it all the time. We got you covered. We got 2 24-hour live streams. One is for the Atheist Experience, 26 seasons of that, by the way, and the other one for Heathen TV, if you want to see a little bit more of me. And you can do that at tiny.cc/AXPTV, or for Talk Heathen, go to tiny.cc/HeathenTV to join in on the fun. And there's pretty much always somebody in the chat. So if you just say you want to just kind of talk to people and treat it like an old IRC chat room, just hanging out with some folks, like that's kind of a good way to do it.
That's awesome. That's a really good thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So go check that out if you haven't already. And last but not least, before we move on, I have to thank the wonderful, amazing, stupendous crew that help make this show happen every single week. We have more crew members. I think some of them are shy right now and aren't showing themselves. I promise you it's more than two.
There.
Yeah. But they're out there somewhere.
Got the lower decks going on.
Yeah, thank you, crew, for helping make this show happen and doing what you gotta do to make the show run. And with that, let's keep moving. Here's a character that
okay. Who do we got? Where?
We got Amanuel calling in from Texas.
I know Amanuel. Oh. Amanuel from yeah.
Amanuel, you have a fan. You have a fan who's here to talk to you today. You're live on Truth Wanted. What's going on, Amanuel?
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, Amanuel. I've seen you on the show before. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So I just want to know the selling pitch of I always wonder, I always see that the AC is very active and promoting agnosticism and stuff. So I always wonder, me seeing it from a theistic perspective, I go ahead and tell about my faith, I believe in this or whatever. What's your selling pitch? It's atheism is not very interesting. It's very I don't know what to say. If you met someone in their deathbed and you go there and you say hey, there's no hope after this, or what's the selling pitch of the atheist experience or whatever? I'm always confused why y'all preach atheism.
Well, so a couple things to that. One, if something is true, it's just true, right? If there isn't a God, that's just kind of a fact. We don't need to have to sell anybody on that fact. The fact still exists regardless of whether somebody believes it or not, right? So that's one thing to consider with that. But talking about the sales pitch idea of it, right? What are the benefits of being an atheist? And I'll give you this. Christianity, for most people, seems like the better deal, right? You get an end life, you get a creator that loves you and wants what's best for you and your family and everybody that you love. So if you ascribe to that version of Christianity, it doesn't seem like atheism wouldn't be the appeal. But there's a counter to this, okay? Because if Christianity isn't true, right, and not just picking on Christianity, but just any kind of religious worldview that talks about afterlives or what have you, then you've been wasting your time. Right? You've been wasting your time doing the rituals, following the good book, making sure you're not doing the sins, right? And even more so than that, you could be harboring prejudices or doing harmful things to other people because your religious beliefs tell you to do so. I mean, I'm not accusing you of anything, but you and I both know that there are Christians out there who will, let me finish here, who will beat others to a pulp with the Bible, right, just for being gay or for being trans or for living a life that they want to live for one reason or another. And so to break away from that is not just that you're following some sort of greater truth. It's also a liberation from the oppression that comes with having some of these beliefs. So if I was to give you a pitch, that would be my pitch. What do you think? Go ahead, Emmanuel.
I thought Naomi was about to speak. So, you said it harbors prejudice, right?
It can.
You think that I have a prejudice against you, right?
Well, if you heard me and if you listen, I specifically said I wasn't accusing you of anything in particular, Emmanuel. But Christianity historically has oppressed other people and continues to oppress other people, yes.
Yeah, that's Dan didn't
What
see that
prejudice
you
do we
are
have
have any
against-
prejudices, Emmanuel. What he said was exactly that, and I think it's to me it seems like there's prejudice is baked into the cake with Christianity specifically. I think with any of the monotheistic big three, like there's very much I've never met like a Christian community that like the general overall story of it is like the very crux of the religion itself is when it boils down to it, it's like God wants you to do things a certain way, and those that don't are going to hell. And so we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. And that's just baked into the cake. That's there.
Yeah.
And if you have that mindset, like that we're the good guys and they're the bad guys, that I mean, I'm not, like I said, I've met plenty of Christians that aren't bigots and don't have prejudices, but that it is baked into the cake. And if you do have prejudices and you do have those preconceived ideas, then it's certainly reinforced by the religion.
And again, Christianity is a religion of over 1 billion people. I understand there's liberal Christians out there that don't follow that, but I'm accounting for one of the many disadvantages, right? So just keep that in mind. It may not apply to your particular case, Emmanuel, but it does for millions and millions and millions of people. Okay.
Like, what prejudice do Christians hold against atheists? Like, what do we actually think about atheists?
They think that atheists, I mean, well, that's an interesting question. First of all, Jesus and God explicitly deny salvation to atheists, right?
Yeah.
Atheists do not receive salvation. And Jesus talks a lot about how the non-believer, and also the Old Testament talks about how the non-believer is a fool. They say that the fool in his heart denies God, right? That they shouldn't be listened to. In the New Testament, in particular, in the book of Acts, not book of Acts, in the letters from Paul talks about how some people can't even associate with non-Christians, right? There's some stipulations with that even, and there's some Christians that do follow that as well. So there's a lot to be said about atheists and non-believers in general, just in the Bible. And that's excluding the actual culture that we live in today, where there are Christians who are on television and who are in office right now telling us how we need God. That's why they put God in our schools and have all these posters and stuff, because if you don't, what happens? You get school shooters, supposedly, right? If you're not a Christian.
Is that where they come from now?
It's a legitimate belief by some
Atheists?
people. So yeah, that prejudice is absolutely found in Christian culture.
Oh, bro, like, we need God. What do you mean? It's like,
I don't.
Okay, I'm sorry. What?
Who said? Why do we need God? Why? Go ahead.
Why do we need God? What do you mean? It's like okay.
Why do you need God? That's a great question. Why do you need God, Emmanuel?
Saying, right? So, the what?
Go ahead. There's a bit of a delay. Go ahead.
Hello? No. Just repeat the question again. I didn't hear that.
No, we're just saying why. We're just repeating the question of why do we need God?
Okay, so the reason is, right, like, what I think, Dan, I'm not saying, you're a bad person, a horrible person. I don't think that's not why you're not receiving, like, eternal life, right? The only reason you're not receiving eternal life is because you don't believe in Lord Jesus. That's the only reason. So
I think a better reason is because there isn't eternal life.
Yeah, I want to let Manuel finish his point here, but also,
sorry, I didn't
you may not believe that I'm a bad person. That's fine. God does, though, and that's explicit in the Bible that I have wickedness in my heart,
for sure.
Right. So that's again a tenet of Christianity. But I'll let you finish your point because I don't want us to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, but like, it's not that Christians are good people, but the atheists are horrible people. Obviously. I obviously think that we're all sinners, but the thing is, you're not more of a sinner than I. It's not that you are more of a sinner than I. It's just that you don't believe in the Lord Jesus. That's the only thing. So, like, you believe in the Son. If you believe in the Son, the Father forgives you if you don't believe in this. If you do not accept the Son, you don't have the Father's forgiveness. That's the thing. It's not that.
And what does that mean? I get
Christians-
eternal punishment, right? I receive eternal damnation or eternal hellfire. And again, Emmanuel, I'm not talking about you specifically, right? The problem is Christianity is a religion of over 1 billion people, right? And so there's just going to be different interpretations. It's just a natural fallout of that. And the problem is, again, there are people in power who actively have prosecuted atheists for just being atheists. There are atheists in this last year who have been killed in particular countries just for being atheists. That doesn't happen in the United States, but the prejudice this still occurs in the United States. And there are definitely laws that circumvent atheists from being able to practice their non-belief, right? Because of the Christian hegemony, the Christian powers, the Christian culture that is dominant in the American culture, right? Like non-Christians, there are some people who literally believe that you can't even be an American without being a Christian. This is a very popular idea. So, I understand that maybe you don't harbor this personally yourself, and maybe you could make a point theologically that that's not the case. It doesn't matter though, right? Because I'm still being affected by that, and other atheists are still being affected by that every day.
Could I jump in real quick? Because Emmanuel, I have a question for you, because this came up earlier and it really caught my attention. And you said something along the lines of we need God. And then when we told you that we didn't, you seemed very like that surprised you, like you didn't understand that how someone could not need God. And I'd like to understand why you do.
Emmanuel, you still there?
Well, yeah, you can't hear me?
Now we
hear you
can,
now. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Okay. Well, okay, what I think is, like, as a society, majority of people...
I'm sorry, Emmanuel, I don't mean as a society. I mean you personally. Why do you personally need God?
He's my creator. Like, he's my creator. He guides me through life or that kind of stuff. So I personally need God. And I personally need his Son, because without his Son, how could I have God in the first place, right? So...
But you didn't actually say anything there, though. You just said you need God because you need God. That's not an answer to the question. Like, what does God do for you that you need God?
Yeah, I mean, it could still be a fact that God created you, but that doesn't mean that you need him, right? So why would you need him?
Like, God is the best friend, but God is the worst enemy. That's how I see God. Like, well, what I see is...
You think that's good? Does that sound good to you?
Does that sound... God sounds good to me, absolutely.
Do you have... No, I mean the part about, like, he's your best friend and he's your worst enemy. Like, in real life, do you have friends that are like that?
I've had people like that.
And you think that's a healthy relationship?
There are people who are toxic. I understand your point. Like, I understand that.
Sounds like God is toxic according to you. And that's what I'm getting at here. It's like, why you say you need this in your life, but it almost sounds to me like it's not so much that you need it, but that you're afraid. I'm right? Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to accuse you of anything. I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah. Let me make it clear. I'm not afraid of God like that, but I would definitely have a reverence. Like, you know what a reverence is, right?
I know what a reverence is. Yeah.
Obviously, it is kind of erotic and non-American talking to America about what reverence means. But my point is, it's not like I'm afraid of God. If I meet God, I'm not like afraid. I'm not like scared of him. But I understand that he is my creator. I understand that the life that I have is given to me, you know? It's like life is like a gift. It's not like you're not like entitled to it, you know? And it is very unfortunate because I know that there are a lot of people who don't believe in God. They live their lives. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be allowed to live or whatever. But I would actually definitely tell them that there is an option where they could actually believe in God, or whether or not they could accept him as their Lord. And, you know, to each his own, there are a lot of people who might not be convinced. I'm convinced that God is perfect, righteous, and good, and all those things. All those omnis, I believe that God possesses. But if you don't buy it, that's okay. I just don't think that preaching atheism is like preaching hope. Like what
preaching Christianity is okay.
Like,
you can preach your ideas, but we can't preach our ideas. Is that what it is?
No, you can preach your ideas, but obviously could.
Yeah, I don't think that's what he was saying.
Right. Well, again, if your focus is an afterlife, if it's all about, do I get to live after this life? Unfortunately, to most atheists, the answer is no. Right. I can't offer you solace in that. I'm sorry. That's just kind of a reality. And yeah, that's a turnoff to a lot of people. That fact in of itself has prevented millions of people from not believing in God. Right.
And I'd be willing to postulate that that's where it all comes from. Like is fear of death is where all religion is the root of all of it. For sure.
But I don't care about that. What I care about is what's real and what's not real. Right. And so whether or not God can offer me an afterlife, if he's not real, it doesn't matter to me. Right. That's the thing. I can't believe in something I don't think is real. I can't say I need something that's just not real. That's the problem. And this isn't just applied to God. This is, again, if you're a Scientologist and told me that I needed to accept L. Ron Hubbard's teachings in order to find hope, I'm sure people do find help in L. Ron Hubbard's teachings, and that's why they're Scientologists. But that doesn't mean that I should or that most people should, right? And obviously, there's a lot of baggage with that. And I think the same thing in lesser forms comes in Christianity, that kind of baggage, right? These kinds of other things that you're talking about, you know, this reverence that you have for this monster that can take your life away at any point in time, that you speak with such, such reverence towards. That is something that I don't have to deal with because I don't need that, right? I can live my life in the way that I see fit. And deal with that. And, you know, and that's kind of a hope in a sense, that I don't have to be tied down to being afraid of whether or not the God of the universe is going to be mad at one day and will smite my existence just because I was created the way that he created me. Right. So I don't know, there's some alternatives there, I think.
I'm not saying he take your life away just because you blaspheme, by the way. What I'm saying is,
he has though, right?
But God
he did that a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that God did that all the time, and he does that all the time in the Bible, right? I mean, look at Job. Look what he did to Job. Like, I mean, that was a faithful man. That was like that was his most faithful follower, and he killed his whole family, and then he put a pox on him. He burned his house down and killed all his crops. I mean, I don't know the story inside and out, but like, I mean, so to me, the idea of like, that doesn't sound good to me. That doesn't sound like a good person or something that you would revere, or also like that. And you still haven't gotten to I still don't understand why you need God. Like, I mean, I understand that you believe in God and that you think. It's like I said, it sounds a lot more to me like it's not so much that you need God, it's that you're afraid of what God will do if you stop believing in him.
I'm not afraid. No, I'm not. Let me make this clear. I'm not afraid of God. I don't even think that most people are. But the thing that you said about, he used to like kill people and, restart the world or whatever, how I see it from the lens is now, how the high priest and all the priests that were in the time of Moses, and they actually received the condemnation from God, but now we receive the righteousness of him. So I do think that now, because of Jesus, we don't have to experience all of that. So now, because now we have received his forgiveness, right? So if we trust on him, there's nothing to be scared about. So why would I be scared of God when he already gave me mercy and eternal security of my salvation? It doesn't make any
Maybe
sense.
you don't, but it sounds like
I-
that's the point. You don't because you've already bought into it. You've bought into the insurance policy, right? That's the thing. Like I haven't, and so because I haven't, and there are some who the act of doubt, right, is leaving that insurance policy, right? You're now stuck with it. You can't get rid of it because if you leave, you don't get to have that salvation. You see the insidiousness that occurs with this, right? This idea of, oh, well, if I believe, I'm good, so I don't have to worry about it. But that's the problem. You're stuck with that belief now, and you can't escape it because your eternal damnation is at stake.
You're not okay. Obviously, I could escape it. It's not like tomorrow I could wake up and say, you know what, today I'm an atheist. I'm rolling with like ObjectivelyDan or whatever.
Could you?
It's not like I'm stuck with it. It's just that I'm convinced by it. Like,
Yeah, that's fair.
it is insane to me that there's someone out there that think that, oh, there's no God, there's no hope. That, you know, it's like, that's kind of crazy. It's like,
It's not that there's
am
no
I-
hope,
I think it's
Emmanuel.
crazy to
It's-
believe that a man 2,000
Yeah.
years ago in Israel rose from the dead after 3 days and saved all of humanity through his death. I think that's crazy, but you know what? It's all about framing, right? Like if I frame it that way,
Yeah.
it's a very uncharitable interpretation of Christianity, I think you would argue. And I think your interpretation of atheism is extremely uncharitable, right? You're talking about how hopeless it is and how everything sucks and how there's no God and we should all be miserable about it. And no atheists actually talk like that, right? Most of us talk about our separation from religion as an act of liberation for us to be able to live our lives the way that we want to without worrying about what other people think about it or an invisible God in the sky thinks about it. And that's what I think atheism is. And that's what I'll
There's more to
continue
it
to talk
than
about
that,
it
though,
is.
Emmanuel. I want to piggyback on what Dan just said because, like, it's more than just that, really. Because, like, the other positive side about atheism is that you get to enjoy this actual life that we have.
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
lot of Christians that I've met and that I've spoken to, they don't. They're living for the afterlife. That this life is but nothing. I think you might even say that somewhere in the Bible. This life is but nothing compared to what the glory of God or whatever it might say. But a lot of Christians will take that and be like, okay, it doesn't matter what happens here. I'm living for the afterlife because that's my true world. That's eternal. So fuck this place. I don't care. And you can see the results of that in a lot of the behaviors of believers. And it's why people don't, like we aren't taking care of our planet in maybe the ways that we should. And it's why people can treat others shabbily and not worry about it because they're the bad people and all that stuff. And I'm going to get my reward in heaven, so I don't have to worry about anything here. But when you don't believe in the afterlife, when you don't believe that you're going to live forever, well, then that makes your time precious. And that makes the time that you do have here on this earth worth fighting for and worth making better.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference in the perspectives from my perspective.
Hard agree. Emmanuel, sorry, I do want to give your response, but we are out of time. We're way over our time usually for this call. But, feel free, of course, to call into the show again whenever you feel like, and
It's nice
we
to
can
talk to you,
continue
Amanuel.
our conversation from there. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Again, not trying to, usually I like to give callers the last word, but we're way over time. We need to move on because we have other people who want to talk to us and we're at the tail end of the show. So we gotta speed things up here. Okay. So before we get to the next caller, let me just make sure. No, okay, we're good. I thought I had another thing I got to say, but I don't. So I'm moving on. Let's keep it rolling. We got some different calls here. I want to take at least the next, at least one, if not two other people here. So I'm going to talk to Dan first. Dan from Canada. He, him, Canuck are his pronouns. Danada, Can from Danada. You're live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Hey, Dan. Hey, Amanda. Happy to
Hi,
be talking to you
Dan.
folks.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Yeah. Well, I was Googling the New Jersey drones and haven't found anything updated since December. So
Darn.
clearly their visa has expired and they've had to go home.
They're censoring the videos on TikTok. That's why they're shutting TikTok down. Okay. This is, you got to think big picture here, Dan. Big picture.
Yeah,
But anyway.
gotta be more holistic about this
Well,
business.
a Chinese app nobody can pronounce. We'll know the truth.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that'll be I've read stories about people going to the new app, Red Note. I guess it's not
yeah,
new,
it's
but it's been around.
amazing.
And
It's like-
and my favorite story is the Chinese kids that are posting their English homework for the American kids, and the American kids are purposely giving them wrong information and giving them wrong. I don't know why that's so funny to me, but it is. So
yeah, we
you go.
already ruined it.
Yeah. But I don't know.
It's so
I don't know.
embarrassing.
Anyway, Dan, what do you want to talk to us about today?
Oh, well, I was thinking on a more out there ethereal idea. And
Okay.
Would it be moral if for the good of the species, we sent out a colony ship that was multi-generational in design? So we're going to have a bunch of volunteers get on a ship, continue out there, their kids and their kids and their kids, so on until this thing lands.
Yeah, like that movie with Chris Pratt and
humanity.
Chris Pratt and what's her face from Hunger Games. They did that. That was a movie.
Honestly, I never watched the movie.
There's also Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah.
What was that movie?
That's-
Wait,
that's-
Okay, yeah.
I'm googling it.
Yeah, I know. I can't think of the name of it. I know what you're talking about, though. Kelly, do you know?
Passengers. That was the
Okay,
plot of
yeah, there it is.
Passengers. There you go. Anyway,
Yeah.
Jennifer Lawrence, and Chris Pratt.
Oh,
Go ahead, Dan.
What
I'm
did-
interrupting.
What did Chris Pratt do? Did he stay with us?
Well, what happened with that movie was they woke up early, I think, and for some reason they couldn't. I don't remember what happened at the end of that movie. I won't
didn't see
spoil it anyway. But yeah, they're on a they're on like cryogenic sleep or something, and they wake up early. So I guess that's not quite the same thing. But I get what you're saying. Multi-generation ship, sure. How ethical is that? Was there more details you wanted to add to that?
Well, I'm just because there's questions on top of questions where is the good of the species worth more than the good of the individual or the good of a small group? Because if you have this ship, you're always going to need an engineer and a janitor and a pilot. So do people test into these? Do people get passed down from their lineage because they're from a lineage of pilots?
You know, it's funny you mentioned that was an exact episode of Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah. Also, that's the plot of the Fallout games. Because like Fallout 3, you're starting out like Liam Neeson's your dad, and like you have to take a test to, and then there's the tunnel snakes and all that. But anyway, yeah,
all that stuff. Yeah, it's all that
That's a
great
thing.
stuff. but Dan, I have a question for you, real quick.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I guess you're asking, like, what are the ethics? Is it ethical to send a group of volunteers in space that's multi-generational? And so I'm first of all, I mean, I don't see any real unethical thing about it. Like, I don't see if they're volunteers. I don't see what the problem is. The potential for ethical problems, I think, could be, or moral problems could be, if it's multi-generational, well, their kids didn't ask for this. Like, that could be one. Another one is like, well, why are we jettisoning off? Is it because we have the intent of going somewhere and then just exploiting that and then just keep doing it over and over wherever we go? Like, those are really the only ones. And to me, those are both kind of stretches. It's like, if if we had the capabilities for interstellar travel and a bunch of people that were willing to do it, I don't really see any ethical problem with it at all.
Well, I see it more as a question of we don't have interstellar travel available to us, but we could put something durable out there for a long period of time. And we don't have cryogenic storage, so we would have to live ship humans. So is the survival of the species more important than the survival of individual norms as we understand them with the freedoms we have on Earth?
This is interesting because I have made the case for anti-natalism before, and so there are some that say that some would say that the world we live in today is already an example of this. We've got climate change, we've got civil unrest, we've got a broadening gap between wealth inequality, right? And so some would say that even the world today and having a kid being born into that is already unethical in itself, let alone you add the confines of whatever fucking space communism we got going on, or space, even worse, space capitalism, right? So
for space
an anti-natalist might say no, right? Exactly. And then you have a lower class and an upper class, and but so yeah, I think an anti-natalist would say it isn't ethical, interestingly enough. So I don't know.
You would say that, Dan. You would. Are you taking that position?
I think that's a pretty hard line stance for an anti-natalist to take.
It's pretty hard line.
I think I mean, how it's like that is a quandary that anti-natalism I think is yet to solve, because there's similar scenarios that talk about this with like nuclear situations and stuff, right? Like if you truly were the difference between the species surviving and not, and as the only means to do it, would I stop humanity? And I don't think I would, right? So maybe I'm not a true anti-natalist in that sense. However, like my sense of anti-natalism comes from the fact that there's 7 billion fucking people on Earth, and not just an Adam and Eve situation. But the space thing is interesting because it's like you kind of are doing an Adam and Eve situation. So I don't know. I hope I don't have to make that choice, because I wouldn't like to make it. I'll put it that way.
I'm still not seeing the ethical problems with it. I don't see why it's a bad thing. Like, to me, from my perspective, like, I mean, you talk about like, is it unethical to bring a person to this world? Well, I mean, I don't think it's unethical. When you look at through the lens of history,
here's what it is.
Like,
here's the difference.
It's always been a terrible place.
That's true, but here's the difference, right? It's the difference between, is this just a space thing and human beings are on Earth and are still fine, or is this humanity's last hope? Because I think that matters too. Because think about, like, if you raised a dog and the dog only got to live in a shelter or like in a pound for its whole life, some would say that it's not best for the dog to even have been born at all, right? That would be an anti-natalist position. So right. If you apply that logic to a kid growing up on a spaceship, right? Like, it's not too dissimilar of an idea, depending on, how awesome the spaceship is. Right.
And that's the other part of it too, though, is like, but like, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is you're talking about like, let's give you the benefit of like, let's give you your best case scenario, in the sense that like, there is nothing wrong with Earth. In fact, Earth is a utopia. We've fixed all the problems. Earth is great. Yeah. What's wrong with sending people out if they want to go? And then it's just a matter of the kids.
That's the problem.
They wouldn't know anything else. They wouldn't know anything else. They would grow up. They would be born on a spaceship, and that's all they would know. And this would be their lives. It's like the COVID kids. Like, they grew up during that, and it was like it was normal to them. And I'm not.
Well, hold on though. Hold on. That's a slippery slope, because no, seriously, think about this. What if you gave a kid? Yeah. Let's give a kid. And this kid is tortured every day, right? And this is a different example. You bring a kid into a world, and you give him to a facility, and this is the this is the Ampharos. Was it the Ampharos dilemma, right? You learn about a place where the power and the utopia of the city is powered by a child that's being tortured every day, right?
Yeah.
Right. The kid
It's
doesn't know anything else
also-
because that's its life.
But it's
Is
just
that
one kid,
ethical?
right?
Most people would say no. Say again, Dan. I didn't hear you.
Also, Snowpiercer.
But
Right.
it's just the one kid. So
In the was it Amphalos? It starts with an O. Those who know. Okay, you can Google it. But that's an ethical quandary that's brought up, right? So like, if one kid versus 100 kids, I mean, a spaceship's got to have a bunch of kids. It's not just going to be one, right? So
Well, yeah, I mean,
You
it
know?
depends on how big. All of this depends on everything. If we're talking, I mean, okay, hypothetically, if we're shipping people out into space for like a generations long journey, it's going to be a big ship. It's going to be a big ship because it's got to have its own ecosystem.
Space capitalism might say it's not a big ship because you don't get to be on the big ship. You get to be on the lower class ship, right?
Well, it's a volunteer situation, remember? So it's like these are, and I think it's also worth bearing in mind that
only the
exploration
first
is
group volunteer situation.
Yes, that's true.
That's the
That
problem,
is
right?
true. Yeah, that is the ethics of it. But I mean, I guess you're right. Well, I guess what I'm getting at is it would have to be a big ship just simply to sustain itself. It would need to have some sort of mechanism where it has its own biosphere, like because you would have to be able to like recycle water, grow food, breathe. You would need plants. You would need all that stuff, and so you would need something that's self-sustainable. Like, so I mean, already we're in science fiction land, but like that would presumably take up space. So there would be space. And so I guess what you're getting at, so if you're taking the position of space capitalism where they cram as many people in as possible.
Exactly.
Then I disagree. Then I'm with you, Dan.
Yeah.
But if we're talking space communist utopia, where to each their needs and from each their abilities, just the right amount of people to get the job done, then I don't really see an issue with it.
Okay. There you go. For the glory of the motherland, Amanda says. For the glory of the cultural revolution that is the space quest, I suppose. Yeah, okay. There's some thoughts there. Dan, what do you think?
I think even if we hit that Earth utopia, it'd be a project that we'd want to look at for the same reason we have car insurance.
I would say even more so than it's human nature to want to explore.
Cryogenics.
Well, yeah.
That's what you do. That's what you got to do. That's the only way that I think that would ethically make the most sense. I don't know if the space multi-generation ship thing makes the most sense. I think.
But that's the whole thing. You can't just add cryogenics and stasis into the picture.
Why not?
That's not the question.
Wait, why the fuck not? We're already talking about going to light years away places. I can't add cryogenics in the mix.
Well, that wasn't the scenario. I mean, if you want to just say, can we put someone in stasis and shoot them off? Like that's different scenario entirely.
Technology. We're going to distant galaxies. We're heading out of Andromeda. We're saying fuck this bitch, but we don't have cryogenics locked down.
Oh, we're not going warp speed. This is multi-generational. We're going impulse at best, and maybe even just running on old unleaded gasoline. Like for all I know.
All right. Well. Like most debates on ethics, nobody wins, and everybody's
everyone's
any closer to the truth. I think so. That's where we're at on this one, Dan. One of us is not going on this trip. Maybe Amanda's going. I ain't going.
But I don't think it's unethical.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a difference of opinion, I suppose. Dan,
I don't want to go to space. I'm scared of space.
Yeah, that's the thing too, because it's like you got to make sure that shit's locked down tight. And under space capitalism, I don't think so. Maybe space communism. Well, depends on
communism wasn't a flawless system exactly.
All right, Dan. Final thoughts, Dan, before we wrap up this heck of a conversation.
Thanks for taking my call. It was fun to think about this. Didn't mean to make so many movie references to things I haven't seen.
That's all right.
But now you got a list. Now you got something so when you do pop on the old Netflix, you don't have to spend longer than the movie looking at things you don't want to see. Now you go go to Omphalos.
Yeah, Omphalos. Those who leave Omphalos, I think is what it is. I can't remember if that's what it's called. Chat's gonna correct me in a second here anyway, regardless. Anyway, something with an O. Regardless, Dan, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it. Nice bit of levity there at the end of today's show. And with that, folks, we are going to be going to the Discord after show in just a second. So stick around if you're watching this live. We're gonna keep the conversation going from there. But before we get to that, I need to give a special thanks to Amanda Bonanza, for being on today's program. Amanda, thanks so much. This has been really fun.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I love doing it. It was great to be here, and it was great to have these conversations. I got to talk to Emmanuel. Like, that's amazing.
Right. That's right. Your Emmanuel cherry has been
next
broken.
Time I'm on.
And that's that. Not every guest gets that. That's a special
It's
privilege.
true. It's a special situation.
Yeah,
it's very nice. Yeah, it was great. I enjoyed it.
And if people want to find
calm this time,
it was a good conversation. It was a good conversation, and I enjoyed it. But if people want to find you more, where should they go? If they want to,
they should go to the Transverse. There's thetransverse.net. Or you could go to just YouTube and type in The Transverse in the search bar, at The Transverse, THE Transverse, like it's up there spelled. And that's what I'm doing. You can find me on Blue Sky. I'm Amanda Bonanza pretty much everywhere. I'm, as far as I know, the only Amanda Bonanza, so you could do that. You'll pretty much find me. I'm on Blue Sky, Facebook. I got that, The Transverse YouTube. And if you want to check out some of the music that I used to make when I was doing the rock band thing, you can go onto Spotify and check out either The Body Electric or Glass Elevator. And those are, listen to some cool tunes.
Awesome. So definitely go check Amanda out if you liked what you saw here on today's show. But before you go, also don't forget to leave a comment, because the prompt this week is finish the joke. Ken Ham, Ken Hovind, and Ray Comfort walk into a bar, and then the rest is up to you, folks. So leave a comment. You might get read in next week's show. Of course, liking and subscribing is also another great way to support the show. We have another super chat that I need to read from Miranda Rensberger. Love you, Miranda, who gave $10 and said, great show. Thanks so much. Great human being, Miranda, for always being so generous with your donations.
Oh, that's great.
I think we are at the end of tonight's show. I also want to give a special thanks to Kelly for being on deck with us tonight.
Thanks,
Ready
Kelly.
to go.
Oh, thank you.
Ready to go if one of us just exploded, and just the show must go on, right? We would just keep going. It'd be sad, but that's what I would want, I think. Of course, I want to give a special thanks, as always, to the crew as well, who helped make the show happen. Shout outs to the crew. I gave one earlier, but I'm gonna do it again because they're just that great. So thanks so much, crew, for that. And one crew member we've already lost. What's happening right now? Is this like an alien situation where we're just losing crew members left and right? So they're being stalked? I don't know. This isn't good. We're gonna have to figure it out.
I like to think of it as they've just got their shit so together that they're like, we only need one guy.
Yeah, they're just piecing out.
This.
They're like, okay,
we got this.
Later. I don't think they were ready for that crew camp. But anyway, we are going to be going to that after show. But as always, folks, this has been another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.
Watch the non-profits and join the hosts in the live chat. Visit tiny.cc/ytnp.